Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Well, happy Thursday, everybody. This is Rich Scheben from the Northern Rockies here in Montana, sitting in for Vincent Finelli today. And I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of blue in the face talking about all the election and voter fraud, but it still has to be done. It's just amazing to me how the powers that be, the supposed good guys in the FBI and the DHS and DOJ, they're not coming up with arrest indictments and prosecutions. It's pretty obvious that we're on an unsustainable path, a scripted, planned path by the powers that be to make America illegitimate, to turn us into a third world banana republic for the benefits of the elite via favors and graft. And everything's on the chopping block, not just the middle class, but freedom, liberty, Bill of Rights, the Constitution, definitions of words. Seems like so many people have sold out to the highest bidder or been threatened or blackmailed, and everything's illegitimate. Elections, voting, work, the FBI, all intelligence agencies, the rule of law, courts, lawyers, judges, science, healthcare, math, history is being rewritten, rules, laws, and accountabilities only applicable to a certain degree based on what group you're in. Wealth, success, economics, currency, money, commerce, prosperity, everything is on the FUBAR chopping block. And it's very obvious that those powers that be want to take us into a Nazi, authoritarian, communist, socialist, tyrannical, totalitarian, fascist dictatorship. And everybody should be awake at this point. We've been talking about how in the last year there's been an exponential wake-up. I think in the last month, it's been exponential to the 10th degree. And if anybody's still asleep, if anybody still thinks this is just about a left-right paradigm, you're lost. You don't read, you don't research. It's over for you. It really is an aristocracy, serfdom relationship. It's a takeover. It's a communist insurrection takeover. So what I'm going to do, folks, I'm just going to get into more election/voter fraud evidence. And I think I've probably given, I know upper hundreds. I don't know if I'm touching thousands, but I bet I'm pretty close over the past several weeks. And it's just amazing to me how they're not deeming this election null and void. How they're not saying how we need a new election. You know, if we took 1 month for everybody to show proof of citizen, of being a U.S. citizen, with bringing your own documents, get into your own database, and then we had a vote. We can easily do this by January 20th. And then had a paper ballot vote. It could also be online, but it's got to have a database that's local, regional, and national, so everybody could look at it real time as votes come in, and you can check with your own paper stub how you voted, and then there's a hotline to call, a legitimate hotline if there's anything nefarious. And we can do it with thumbprints. We can do it with major, several different types of IDs. It could be passport. It could be, well, a lot of that could be counterfeited too, but we have to cross-reference to different IDs. And every person who registers to vote needs to show that type of verification. It's not that hard. We have the technology. I mean, even if we have to hand count it one at a time, we're going to have a lot more accuracy and save the taxpayers a heck of a lot more money than all this fraud and theater that the powers that be are trying to pull off here. See, this is why when you get rid of the rule of law, when you start eliminating protection of rights and restitution out of the rule of law for certain people who are targeted, you create a no check on runaway power system. And then you eliminate rules of laws incrementally and replace them with precedents. And this is a subset of giving free lunch to the elite. This affects wealth redistribution in a negative way for the people. It creates more divide and conquer strategies, professional pot stirrers, etc. So something needs to be done, and all I can do is give suggestions, be on national radio, worldwide radio, and hopefully wake up as many people as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start going into evidence, folks, and here we go, because I have a lot to talk about here. First article, I'm going to mention either articles or talking points like I do every time I'm on the air to try to give as much information as possible. Postal subcontractor was told that over 100,000 ballots in Wisconsin was gathered on November 4th and post-dated for Election Day. How many of these people have been witnesses have been coming forward? How many people have been signing affidavits under perjury of law to go to prison regarding perjury, regarding the rule of law? This is all evidence. Because if this isn't evidence, folks, then everybody who witnessed murders and rapes and other crimes in the past, that you're creating a precedent saying that these people should be let free, even when there has been witnesses for these horrific crimes. Next article. Another whistleblower. U.S. Postal Service labeled Trump mail undeliverable. 388,000 ballots backdated and then disappear. Man, we truly are a banana republic. There was a very brave person. Her name is Melissa Carone from Michigan. And she really blew the doors off of this election fraud with extremely capable, verified, believable evidence. And she even talked about how the ballots were being scanned 8 to 10 times. Ballots were supposed to be dropped into sealed boxes after scanned through the tabulating machine. And Melissa Carone said that the ballots were accessible to the election worker after being scanned through the machine. She said the boxes that were supposed to receive the scanned ballots were moved to a different part of the room and then used to block observers. How many stories did we hear about blocked observers or observers being threatened? She was saying how she can't find a job anymore. Her children are being attacked. She's being attacked. She had to leave social media. This is what happens when you're a patriot. You get demonetized. You get attacked. Just like Jenna Ellis. The Democrats are saying that she deserves to be raped. Does that sound like people who are innocent, that people who are winners, that does this sound like if you won a legitimate race, whether it be a marathon, an election, it doesn't matter. Would you be having these behaviors public if your win was legitimate? Of course you wouldn't. She also said that she called the FBI. You know, it's getting to the point where the FBI and the DOJ are kind of like when Rudy Giuliani asked at that press conference, what publication are you with? What news agency are you with? And this woman said, I'm with CNN, and he started cracking up. This is what's going to happen to all government entities. The FBI, the DOJ, the U.S. Post Office, everything. Because they're so corrupt. Everybody's going to laugh when they try to give some type of official superiority. So anyway, she called the FBI on November 5th to report instances of fraud that she had seen, including these ballots being counted 8 to 10 times. And I'm going to quote her for a couple sentences here. She said, I spoke with a woman for at least 40 minutes, Carone told the Michigan State Oversight Committee on Tuesday. The phone disconnected. Disconnected. She had all my information, and she never called back. You can't even make this stuff up, people. I had to call them back. I haven't even been contacted back since, unquote. I mean, this is beyond, you know, I know so many people who work in the government at all levels, local, state, federal, and they say they're sick of it. They're saying, oh, we'll do this next week because there's no accountability. And they say the only way they can get fired is with sexual harassment lawsuits. So basically, it's just targeting the men. And I asked this young lady who I know, and I'm going to not give out her name. I'm not going to give out her department. I'm not going to say what state she works in. But she says she can't stand it. She loves the paycheck and the protection and the pension and the benefits. But she says it drives her crazy because if she was, and she is a young person, and that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to give out her age because I don't want her to lose her job. But she said if it was up to her, 90% of the people would be fired. Carone also, previously submitted a sworn affidavit detailing some of her allegations, including saying that trucks that were supposedly delivering food for poll workers actually brought in thousands and thousands of ballots, unquote. In a ruling earlier this month denying an injunction to stop the certification of Michigan's election results, a state court judge, crooked judge, I threw that in myself, found that Carone's description of events at the TCF Center was incredible because other affidavits didn't make the same accusations. I'm hearing these accusations from different counties and different states all over the country. And she also said that in 24 hours, 27 hours, there was not a single vote for Trump. Yeah, that sounds legit. Well, welcome back to the show, folks. Rich Scheben from Montana sitting in for Vince today as he catches up on some farm work and stuff. So I'm going to continue to talk about more evidence that's related or indirectly, directly related to the election/voter fraud. And pardon me if I sound a little out of breath because usually during the commercial breaks I'm running around doing chores, whether it be feeding the wood stove, taking care of the animals, or doing the little chores I need to do in the cabin. So here's an article that talks about felony charges for a mail theft ring, which they think is a much bigger operation. It's unbelievable. The first sentence in this article that came out on December 1st says basically the entire U.S. Postal Service is riddled with fraud. Now I want you to think about the fact that the role that the U.S. Postal Service played and how many articles I've given, even in this short broadcast so far today, regarding the implications of fraud and felonies relating to the U.S. Postal Service. It's gone rogue, folks. The DOJ, the FBI, everything has gone rogue. And the people inside, even at the lower levels, are afraid to step up because they know they have a really good gig with paychecks, benefits, and pensions. And ironically, we're paying for it. And the poor people who get pennies, crumbs on Social Security, we have to pay for their huge paycheck, benefit package, and pensions, which is 10, 20, 30 times greater than what the rest of us is getting. This is outrageous. So anyway, this article, and as always, I try to mention the bullet points because I have so much evidence of election and voter fraud. But this article talked about these people clearing out mailboxes at a Loop residential building with the help of real counterfeit postal service master keys. What do you think they got that? Is that like the big guy Joe Biden getting a piece of Hunter's action when he goes to our enemies and creates crooked commerce? Is that their VIG? Do the postal workers get a VIG? Anyway, Candace Shandar, 32, was arrested Friday after a witness allegedly saw her removing envelopes and parcels from mailboxes at a condo building in the 800 block of South Wells around 10:30 a.m. The witness followed Shandar, took note of her license plate and number, and then called the police. Well, officers found the car nearby, and prosecutors said Shandar had mail shipments from the condo building in the vehicle along with U.S. Postal Service master key. She allegedly admitted to taking the mail, but she's charged with much more than package theft. Prosecutors hit her with charges of identity theft, forgery, burglary, possession of burglary tools, possession of meth. She also has outstanding warrants for criminal trespass to vehicles and obstruction of identification, according to prosecutors. Among some of the things in Shandar's possessions were checks, credit cards, entire personal profiles of other individuals, people. Our U.S. Postal Service has gone mafia, has gone rogue. They're the new Al Capone, maybe along with the FBI and the DOJ. You know, it's really sad when we're paying taxpayer dollars for these government workers' salaries. It really is terrible. Even Sidney Powell said, quote, "Frankly, I'm beginning to think the entire FBI and Department of Justice needs to be hosed out with Clorox and fire hoses." Another article from the Gateway Pundit says A.G. Barr destroyed his name for all eternity. He's another card-carrying swamp rat. We'll be right back after this break, folks, and continue this topic. Welcome back, everybody. Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli. And before the break, I was talking about the DOJ and Bill Barr and the FBI and the U.S. Post Office and the corruption and the fraud, the lack of activity, the lack of protecting the people under the rule of law. And when I say we, I mean the alternative media and the patriots, are literally doing the work of all the three-letter intelligence agencies, of law enforcement, of the mainstream media, of journalism, to note, by definition, and all these government workers and bought and paid for mainstream media workers, basically theater actors. They're just a different form of Hollywood. And it's really a shame what has happened to America, because we have allowed people to be demonized and delegitimized and discredited because they're being called a controversial racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, homophobe, intolerant, violent, hater, conspiracy theorist, basically conspiracy theorist, anti-ismist phobe. And we've allowed so many decades of unchecked power and inaction towards political correctness that we've literally lost control of the ship. And it's unsteerable at this point. And it's going to be up to we, the people, the patriots, the alternative media, to do something about it. Because everybody else, every institution, is bought and paid for. So there was a big article the other day that really ticked a lot of people off in America, and rightly so, and saying, quoting Barr, that, quote, today we have seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome in the election. Not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected different outcome in election, pardon me. So basically, they came out with kind of a retraction and a requote because the Associated Press apparently quoted him. Anything from the AP, anything from CBS, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, these are all, you have to remember, folks, they're controlled by 5 or 6 corporations. They're all bought and paid for. They have sold you out, meaning you being the American people. Okay? So they came out with a new quote, and I'll just read it. Some media outlets have incorrectly reported that the DOJ has concluded its investigation of election fraud and announced an affirmative finding of no fraud in the election. That is not what the Associated Press reported, nor what the Attorney General stated, a DOJ spokesperson said. Now, they also concluded with the fact that the department will continue to receive and vigorously pursue all specific and credible allegations of fraud as expeditiously as possible. Expeditiously, pardon me. I need new glasses. Anyway, this is really kind of outrageous when you think of the DOJ has been investigating all this Spygate and with Mueller and everything. It's been going on for over 500 days. And, you know, the White House came out with a response to Barr's comments, underlying the fact that so many witnesses that they have brought forth are not working with them and haven't even been contacted by the FBI. Now, you have to remember, the DOJ prosecutes. The DOJ needs law enforcement like FBI, like the Department of Homeland Security, to do their job. But see, no one's doing their job because they're all bought and paid for. And the Trump campaign basically said, with all due respect, I'm quoting right now, to the Attorney General, there hasn't been any semblance of a Department of Justice investigation. Of course not. Going back to the quote, we have gathered ample evidence of illegal voting in at least 6 states, which they have not examined. We have as many witnesses swearing under oath that they saw crimes being committed in connection with voter fraud. As far as we know, not a single one has been interviewed by the DOJ. The Justice Department also hasn't audited any voting machines or used their subpoena powers to determine the truth. What's truth anymore, folks? All depends on who's been bought and paid for under the table. And Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis and attorneys for Trump said in that statement. So, you know, I do a lot of reading, and I notice, you know, there are a lot of people saying, well, he's playing 3D chess. This is a hidden sting operation. It's a sneak attack. It's covert strategy. You know what it looks like to me? It looks like William Barr is going to be labeled as a cross between Elmer Fudd, Wile E. Coyote, and Benedict Arnold. When Benedict Arnold, when he was one of George Washington's top officers, he really did a good job until towards the end, when his last year in office, he was selling secrets for his personal gain to the British. And then he did a lot of traitorous, seditious things, and then the British made him a brigadier general. He fell off a horse. He had an accident with his leg. One leg ended up being 2 inches shorter than the other. Anyway, long story short, after a while, the British didn't even want him or trust him anymore and sent him back to Britain. See, this is what's going to happen to all these people who think that sticking up for the left and hedging their bets is going to get them ahead. No, it's not. It might give you the impression of getting ahead short term, but you're usually the first ones to be discarded, to be delegitimized, and to be murdered because you're a turncoat. That's what a Benedict Arnold is. You're a turncoat. No one's going to trust you if you hedge your bets. I'm still having a hard time believing, and I'm doing this only because I want to be an American. I want to hope that Bill Barr has some legitimacy to him. And, I'm reading that he's a big con man. He also reminds me of, you ever see, for those of you who are old enough, I grew up in the 60s and 70s watching black and white TV, and then it turned to color, I think late 60s, maybe early 70s, we got a color TV. I can't remember, but I remember a show called Hogan's Heroes. And there was a guy on there. It was a comedy, a sitcom, and there was a big fat German sergeant named Sergeant Schultz. And half of his lines for everything in that show was, I see nothing. I know nothing. I see nothing. That's what William Barr reminds me of. And now we have thousands. When I started doing talk radio almost 10 years ago, there was hundreds of citizens doing these jobs for the government. Now there's thousands. And speaking for myself, for Vince Finelli, Gwyneth Isaacs, all the people on USA Prepares, all the people on alternative media, not all, but a lot, we're doing this as volunteers. While the government workers, whether it be DOJ, FBI, U.S. Postal Service, all these people tied to all this fraud, we're paying their paycheck, their benefit package, and their pension. Government workers, when this is all over, are going to be known as the biggest welfare fraud on the American people's back. They have gone rogue. They're overreaching, they're corrupt, and they're totally 100% unfunctional. In fact, they are literally making fraud the new norm. And this is why everything needs to be decentralized, folks, especially government. We need to have term limits, not just for elected officials, but for government workers. If you're going to be a government worker, you should be a worker for 8 years. 8 years. You shouldn't get a pension because the private sector is not good. How can you point your finger at somebody in the private sector and say, I demand you to pay my pension when they don't have one? That's what it is. We need to decentralize everything. 90% of government needs to go. We need public forums in every town where people have a microphone and give ideas and solutions that's going to benefit the people. See, everything is run by the elite, folks. The elites are causing chaos. They ride in to fix the problem, and I'm using air quotes for fix, while obtaining more power and control along the way. That's called an addict, folks. An addict. They create disasters. They create catastrophe, infighting, That's why I call them professional pot stirrers. And they position themselves to be in the right position financially and morally is in quotes again, because they spin the control of the story of the media, and they control it all because everybody's bought and paid for. What the elite are doing, along with the government workers, their lieutenants, if you will, is they're purposely manufacturing the perception of their own self-importance and self-preservation. And how many times have we given examples on this show of hypocrisies and double standards? And if I get to it today, I want to mention some of those articles again. And this is all new stuff. I mention all new stuff every time I'm on the air. So we need practice what you preach laws. If we had this, not in every example, not in every context, but if we had practice what you preach laws, you have all these, these government workers, from mayors to governors to AGs to all these people making laws on masks and social distancing and not being around families, and they're being caught doing exactly what they're telling us not to do. We have to beware of terms like experts and officials, because it means nothing. Experts and officials mean nothing. It all depends on, because they're all bought and paid for. They've sold you out. Today's big corporate system and government system literally breeds, incentivizes, cultivates, grooms, rewards all these individuals and departments and corporations to be greedy, corrupt, cowards. They're sellouts, they're seditious, they're traitors, they're self-serving, and all they want to do is feather their own nest. I'll be right back, folks. Welcome back, folks. I am going to finish up on a couple things. I'm going to go back to more voter/election fraud evidence and facts. And I was talking right before the break about how government and big corporations breed, incentivize, grooms corruption. And the new joke today is now going to be the term public servant. When you hear that or anything synonymous to that, just go ahead and laugh. Remember the old joke years ago? I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Well, they're not here to help. They're here to take what you've got. They're here to now have sold out to take your freedoms and liberties and Constitution. They're now here to say what you can't do, but they're going to do it. Public servant is now a joke term. So we have these powers that be getting away with lies. They're redefining laws. There's no laws. Rules, laws, and accountability mean nothing. It's all dependent on two groups, and it breaks down to two groups: your victim group status and your protectionist group status. And the people who are in the protectionist group status, Hunter Biden's a great example, the trust fund babies, the kids who grow up, who are going to get millions of dollars of money handed down to them in inheritances and lands and business. Those are the protectionist group. And they use the victim group status by saying you of a certain group, you can't compete. Your work is suboptimal. So they're going to purposely insult your work ethic, ability, and intelligence in order to degrade and disrespect you. So you go fighting against other groups who talk about the truth. That's one of the reasons they race bait. Their job is to manufacture perception, pity, guilt, and ideology. Their job is to sway public opinion and control the narrative. Their job is to use media propaganda, subliminal messaging, professional wordsmithing, Hegelian dialectic. Their job is to dilute truth. But when you fall to this, you have to remember you're not empowering your group or you as an individual. You're destroying your nation when you demand to lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job. All these years I've been talking about certain people feeling entitled to play the victim group status card, and I tie that into the delegitimization of work. Now people are coming to me from all over saying, Rich, you're 100% right. And I wish I wasn't right. I wish enough people saw this in the beginning that I didn't have to tell certain people their strategies in order to wake people up with all the many subsets of distractions, dumbing down, and division that I've talked about over the years. So as these powers that be redefine laws, redefine words, they enable the big and the corrupt using groups and people against each other for the gain of the elite and their lieutenants in the system. So that means everything's bought and paid for. Elections, everything. Jobs, nothing is earned. That means prosperity is in major doubt, and we're all talking about survival now. So with all this corruptions, I mean, I'm never vetting anything from votes to these Dominion machines, Democrats. Have you noticed that in these races, Democrats are literally finding votes? Oh, I found some more votes. We live in a world of lies, plausible deniability, excuse behaviors based on what group you're in, fraud, control. We have a caste system that's not developing, that's developed. We have corrupt government and corporations pushing propaganda over truth and fake transparency. And that's what, one of the disclaimers I always say, probably up to 10% of our articles that even get to, vetted and gets to the alternative media are designed to create fake news, designed to distract, to divert, to reduce credibility, legitimacy, and demonize. In the mainstream media, it's probably 100%. We all have to be careful. You can look at it this way. Objective facts versus subjective emotional opinion. We need less political correctness, less philosophy, less stories, and more facts. I'll be right back, folks, after this break at the top of the hour. Welcome back, everybody, to hour number 2. This is Rich Scheben from the Northern Rockies here in Montana, sitting in for Vincent Finelli today, and I am going solo. And I have so much information I have yet to get to. And I'm going to start with go into the category of election/voter fraud, evidence, facts, and that type of thing. I want to start with Michael Flynn promotes, this is an article, petition calling on Trump to suspend the Constitution and declare martial law. And I notice a lot of patriots going this way, and I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that I want to know who's going to be in power if we go there. Is it going to be FEMA? Is it going to be military? Is it going to be the UN? Are there going to be certain concessions that we need to be aware of? So this is the time, folks, to get away from the mainstream media. You need to go to the alternative media. You have to eliminate television. You have to think for yourself. We have to realize that the mainstream media and the powers that be who control these few corporations who are controlling all the propaganda, hoaxes, false flags, and lies, especially gaslighting, is bought and paid for. It's all the funds are coming from the same very few people at the top, and bribing, blackmailing, and threatening people along the way. This is what America has turned into. We're a banana republic. We're a mafia. We're a cult. We're acting in every way, shape, and form like a third world country, mostly coming from the Democrat left establishment, cabal, Illuminati. I don't care what word or words you want to throw in there. It's just so corrupt. So I'm going to keep going here because of time. The China connection, parent company, this is very disturbing, folks. And I bet the majority, this article came out a day ago, but I wasn't on the air yesterday. A parent company of Dominion Voting Systems received $400 million from a Swiss investment bank. Sit down for this last part, people. 75% owned by the Chinese government. That should really scare you. Our people at the top have literally sold you out. They're saying what you say as a citizen means nothing. They say your vote means nothing. And you want to know the funny part? They're making you pay for everything, including their vacations, their salaries, their benefit package, and their pension. And they're laughing at you around every corner and every step of the way. Next, I was driving completed ballots from New York to Pennsylvania, so I decided to speak up. This is referring to a U.S. Postal Service contract truck driver. My gosh, it seems like everything connected to the U.S. Postal Service is fraud, is criminal. I'm at a loss for words that we're paying these people salary, benefit package, and pension. It's appalling. Next, Trump calls for a full forensic audit of mail-in ballots. Well, President Trump, I don't disagree with you, but the people around you, especially the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, the DOJ, they should be doing that job. You're doing the job of all these people who are collecting taxpayer money who are doing absolutely nothing. And we don't need just of these swing states. We need full forensic audit of all, not just mail-in ballots, but Dominion voting machines, because I think I've mentioned every example in the world of fraud and nefarious behavior that could have occurred. Next, Dominion software was accessible to far-left indivisible organizers on election night, an Obama-linked group that campaigned for Joe Biden. You can't make this stuff up. Next, Georgia elections officials were reportedly filmed destroying evidence. I've read so much about the destruction of evidence. My gosh, shredder trucks going in and out of election headquarters, and not just shredding ballots, but shredding software, shredding hardware. They brought out the heavy-duty shredders. This is ridiculous. What fraud. What a banana republic. Please, everybody duct tape a banana to their flag. Next, a Michigan poll watcher said, I witnessed military ballots being duplicated, but only for Joe Biden. And these people say there's no evidence. My gosh, I'm sitting here blue in the face for weeks talking about evidence. Next, Gwinnett County admits Dominion employee took data from election management systems and filtered it on the laptop, which is against the rules. But again, rules, laws, and accountability. Depends on if you're a Democrat or not. All depends on your group. Next, Colonel Phil Waldron tells Michigan lawmakers truckloads of ballots for Joe Biden were inserted into the 2020 election. Folks, the only reason I'm still doing this stuff is because, do you remember several weeks ago I talked about how Trump declared a national emergency with this executive order, and I went through. It probably took me about an hour and a half to go through all this. Basically, the unauthorized accessing of election and campaign infrastructure and what he has the power to do. I'm just hoping, people, that he literally has some allies who hasn't been bought and paid for or blackmailed or threatened left. Next, Maricopa GOP chairwoman. I watched Trump votes switch to Biden votes when tabulated by the Dominion machine with my own eyes. How many of these reports, I can't even count anymore, of how much evidence, visual, technological, forensic evidence that shows all this that we've mentioned for weeks. I mean, if you or I did any one of these examples of fraud, people, we'd be in the who's gal weeks ago. And here we are still talking about this, and the left and the Democrats are still trying to portray this theater, this fraud, as legitimacy. Next, judge allows Trump legal team to review tests of Clark County voting machines. Well, I'll tell you, Trump legal team, if you get any authentic machine that hasn't been swiped or changed or reprogrammed, good luck, because so much time has passed, who the heck knows what you're going to get? Next, corrupt FBI Director Chris Wray. By the way, did you see how this article started? Corrupt FBI Director Chris Wray. And now fired CISA Director Chris Krebs produced a video to create before the election to try to sell you on validity of the election. You can't make this stuff up. This is like cartoon stuff. A Twilight Zone writer could not come up with this crap. Next, Democrats bribed Native Americans to vote for Biden. Yeah, do you remember when I mentioned a few tribes just on Tuesday on how they gave, tablets and gift cards and all this stuff to the Indian people on the rolls for their vote? My God, this is out in the open. And the DOJ and the FBI and the Democrat corrupt left are still saying there's no evidence? Wow, we have fallen, America. Last stop, the last dam is us, the people. That's it. Every institution has sold us out. Next, firm link to Joe Biden's Scrubs website of all China-related business. Imagine my shock. Next, investigation of 100 ballot sample in Arizona finds 3% of the ballots were deemed fraudulent, all in favor of Joe Biden. Well, again, even with ballots, if you count the same ballots, these ballots have probably, after all these weeks since the election, this December 3rd, we're talking a full month. All these ballots that were in question have probably been destroyed with these shredder trucks, and they brought in new semi-legitimate ballots so the signatures and envelopes could square up. Wow. And these government workers, wow, they call themselves public servants when we've had over 1 million combat soldiers die for our freedom, liberty, and lifestyle. And that's how these government workers thank them? Wow. I'm a loss for words. Next, I knew what was at stake from what I witnessed at the TCF, and my heart broke. Michigan GOP election witnesses and immigrant says. I listened to her testimony. She was awesome. She was, I believe they called her a liar. She was extremely credible, extremely intelligent, extremely well-spoken, although she had an accent, which doesn't mean anything. Heck, I'm from New York. Even though I lost most of it, it still comes out when I have beers with my buddies from New York and New Jersey. But, wow, there's so many credible, great, brave, courageous whistleblowers. People, when we lose our courage, it's all over. There's no wall of protection. We're infected, and we're going down, and it's going to metastasize like a cancer. We cannot lose our courage. Next, truckloads of ballots coming out of New York reported yesterday. Tonight, a Michigan poll worker reports on ballots received in sequential order. Oh, what a coincidence. Next, voter group in Georgia has identified more than 50,000 illegal votes, enough to move Georgia to Trump. Well, how come it's not happening? I'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Appreciate you being here. Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli. And I'm looking at data I have to discuss versus the amount of time I have, so I'm going to step it up a little bit and shortcut my shortcuts, as they unfortunately have to say every time I'm on the air. Next, Mueller issued 2,800 subpoenas, executed 500 search warrants, and conducted 500 witness interviews to find no collusion crime against Trump. And Durham has been investigating a real crime for just as long, but without issuing anywhere near the number of subpoenas and search warrants. We don't know if Durham's real. We don't know if the DOJ is real. We don't know anything. I'm just hoping this executive order that I talked about for about an hour and a half weeks ago is going to come to fruition, and they're keeping low. But in the meantime, they are discrediting themselves, their agencies, and their name. Now, keep in mind, you paid hundreds of millions of dollars for all these subpoenas, the Theodore Mueller trial, the witness interviews, the fake collusion, the fake P dossier. You paid for it, America. You did. And how many articles have we mentioned in the alternative media, including this show, about the Hunter Biden emails revealing Joe Biden, your supposed president-elect, was involved in foreign play-to-pay schemes known as the big guy, receiving up to 50% of Hunter Biden's business dealings, corrupt business dealings in China, Ukraine, and Russia, and other countries. But this huge scandal doesn't run on the mainstream media, the MSNBCs, the CNNs, the ABCs. No. Do you remember what that political director, the CNN's vice president, said on CNN? That guy Chalian, quote, "Obviously we're not going with the New York Post story on Hunter Biden right now," unquote. It's a scam, folks. It all depends on who's got their hand out and who's being bought and paid for and who's been blackmailed, mostly pedophilia. You are paying for every little bit of theater out of your pocket, out of your taxation, out of your inflation. You're paying for it all. The whole scripted plan, you're paying for it. Next, Mark Elias changed the rules in Georgia to ensure that anyone who dared to invalidate mismatching signatures would have their identity revealed. That's preemptive bullying. That's what the Democrats are doing: censoring, surveilling, tracking, tracing, intimidating, threatening, blackmail. They have many paths to conformity. Next, postal contractor Nathan Pease says that he was told by two separate postal workers, frickin' postal workers, on two separate occasions that the USPS in Wisconsin was gathering over 100,000 ballots on the morning of November 4th to backdate the ballots so that the ballots would be counted even if they arrived after the statutory deadline. My God, lock these people up. Put them in jail. How come there's no prosecutions for these swamp people? How come the Benghazi criminals weren't brought to justice? How about 9/11? Where's the declassifications? How come George Soros and Joe Biden and Bill Gates are wanted for international crimes and nothing's happening? How about Justice Scalia's murder and cover-up investigated by the so-called Justice Department? Biggest air quotes in the world, the World Justice Department. How come Snowden, Michael Flynn, and Julian Assange aren't recognized for their patriotism, still under persecution? My God! We've gotten pathetic. We've gotten really pathetic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I'm running out of time. I'm going to start going into articles of consequences, of political correctness, of what's happening because we have allowed all these decades of inaction to occur, the corruption, double standards, the hypocrisies, the COVID agenda. I'm going to go into these articles right after the break. Welcome back. We're down to less than a half an hour of USAPrepares.com. I'm Rich Scheben in the Northern Rockies of Montana, sitting in for Vincent Finelli today. And I'm going to continue with more information, more facts, more news. Listen, folks, did you read about Barack Obama saying how he'll take the vaccine, him and George Bush, on television to show it's real? Yeah, if he gets a tainted vaccine, you know that's not going to happen. He's probably going to get either a good one or a saline solution. It's going to be theater. It's going to be theater. Now, I want to mention some articles that have recently come out. There's a whistleblower from the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. He operates 35 hospitals in western Pennsylvania, and he describes the latest surge of COVID cases was overblown by the media. You know, basically saying that this second wave of the Chinese virus is a total hoax, just like the rest of the pandemic hysteria. And we've talked about this in great detail on how the powers that be are using this as a vehicle. And we've talked about this in great detail. They're using it as an agenda to crash the economy, to delegitimize work, eliminate free markets and supply and demand, bring in centralized government-controlled cryptocurrencies, get rid of cash, get rid of peaceful assembly, use the technocracy to control everything, make you submissive, break your will, eliminate legitimate voting. We've talked about this as a whole list of like 30, 35 things that I've talked about this many times in great detail and specificity. That's what this is a tool or vehicle for. We have to keep all that in mind. Now, there's a lot of studies also that we talked about on this show and around the alternative media, like the Denmark study, the Johns Hopkins study, where they say masks don't work, and yet they also say that there was no real increase in deaths due to COVID. These are credible institutions and people doing these studies, and they're not only afraid to publish them, but they've been purged off of the internet. So the people can't see this stuff. They need to manage you through fear. They need to make you wear masks so they can hide individualism. They make you submissive. They break your will. It's all connected. It's not by accident. It's all planned. It's all scripted. And there was a recent article that just came out in the last 24 hours about 5 burning questions about the COVID vaccine. They're very good questions here. Now, you know, the first one is, does it work? And they're all, some of them are claiming a 90+% efficacy rating. Do you want to take a chance to get a vaccine from a company who's asking for liability immunity because we've protected these corrupt companies, adding to more wealth inequality because we're too busy being useful idiots, as they say, sticking up for our group, our hyphen, and our pronouns, and not worrying about hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications. That's where you get when you delegitimize work. It makes us open and vulnerable. It's like being in a boxing match with one arm. You can't protect yourself. So if they have a 90% efficacy rating plus, and you have a survival rate of 99.7%, how do you justify that math, people? Really? There's another question regarding, and they talk about the PCR tests. We've mentioned on this show about how PCR tests are fake and phony, where they're 93 to 97% ineffective and inaccurate. And then another question is about safety. Well, where are all these double-blind studies, especially for masks? The people should be demanding, where are the studies, the legitimate studies, when people are using all these masks and viruses in general have such a small micron size to get through any of these things. Never mind the hypoxia, never mind the bacteria that you're getting, including staph infections. Come on, people. These people are safety. How can safety be even a question of conversation when these companies are asking for liability immunity? This is why they call you useful idiots. And when people ask what's in it, they say we don't know or they won't say. We're going to talk about that. Who's going to get it? Well, the first people on the list are the elderly. Keep in mind, the same people who are promoting this are the same people calling for depopulation. Please, people, you got to think for yourselves. You know, we can put the information out there. We can't make you do anything because you have free will. But for all the feminists, for all these years who said, it's my body, I get to do what I want, where's your big mouth now? Because if they make vaccines mandatory or make it so you can't do commerce or you can't buy food or you can't do anything, that's tyranny. That's against the Nuremberg codes. So be careful of expert advice, people. Now, again, I always say, are they going to throw out a more, another mutation of this? Are they going to make it so that they kill more people and give themselves more credibility? Maybe. We don't know that. But they want immunity passports. They want more social distancing. They want more lockdowns. There's signs that I have read. They say don't look at people in the eye because they don't want you talking. They don't want you having meetings, assembling. That's against the Constitution. Socializing, travel, loans, commerce, everything is up in the air. Everything. I want you to keep that in mind. Now, when I was talking about when I'm going to get back to this so-called deadly pandemic, I want to read a quote from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and here it goes. For the first time in history of vaccination, the so-called last generation mRNA vaccines intervene directly in the genetic material of the patient and therefore alter the individual genetic material, which represents the genetic manipulation, something that has already forbidden and until then considered criminal. In my opinion, these new vaccines represent a crime against humanity that has never been committed in such a big way. He says that the COVID-19 vaccine should be forbidden and avoided at all costs. Now remember, these new vaccines, they contain foreign DNA, RNA, and proteins that may prompt allergies and autoimmune diseases from bacteria, viruses, fungi, yeast, bovine fetal serum, monkey kidney tissue, toxic metals, mercury, aluminum, MSG, and corpse preservatives like formaldehyde and formalin. To this new toxic brew, one can also include retroviruses and aborted fetal cells, as well as a list of chemicals that only a chemist or a pharmacist can pronounce. It is also worth noting that these vaccines carry the risk of irreversible harm and even death, and the package inserts prove this. It clearly violates the Nuremberg Code of Medical Ethics to promote them as safe and effective. And it's equally worth noting, people, that vaccine injury program, okay, it's N as in November, VICP, Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, has already paid out over $4 billion of vaccine injuries. Remember, you can never unvaccinate once you have vaccinated. Now, a lot of these vaccination liability programs are literally behind closed doors. They're secretive. So when they disclose $4 billion of industry monies that's been paid out for vaccine injuries, who knows how much there really is? Now, we've talked on this show about processed foods. Processed foods basically get processed. They could be with chemicals, they could be with alcohol, they could be with the actual process, taking caffeine out of coffee, putting estrogen in soy. It could be a lot of things. And we need to think about what's happening with vaccines. Now, I'm going to mention here, I have 4 or 5 pages called the Vaccine Excipient Summary. And in addition to a weakened or kill disease antigens, viruses, or bacteria, vaccines contain very small amounts of other ingredients called excipients. Some excipients are added to vaccines for specific purpose. These include preservatives to preserve contamination, for example. That means processed, right? When you talk about it in the context of food. Or adjuvants to help simulate a stronger immune system, for example, aluminum salts. And stabilizers to keep vaccines potent during transportation and storage, for example, sugars or gelatin. Same thing with food. A lot of the wheat and just a lot of foods, especially grains, are meant to be cut, lay on the ground longer, and stay contained in the jars longer in the grocery stores or the cans. So we have, all you have to do is read the antigens. It's all in the package insert. And, a lot of these vaccines are listed and is contained in final products as well. Read the package inserts, folks. There's a reason why the big pharma wants to get rid of the PIs, and they keep making the contraindications, side effects, and adverse events smaller, so you can't read them. I mean, I'm just going to mention some of these things. Now, keep in mind, there's a lot of things I'm not going to mention here because I can't pronounce. And I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for over 20 years. Not recently, but long ago. But still, monosodium glutamate, sucrose, human serum albumin, alcohol, FD&C yellow numbered dye, aluminum lake dye, aluminum hydroxide, sodium chloride, formaldehyde, glycerin, potassium phosphate, ammonium citrate, lactose, polysorbate 80, yeast profile, bovine serum albumin. People, I can go on and on and on, and I'm not trying to promote an ABBA song here. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back, folks. Last segment. I hope I gave good information today. I'm going to rattle off some more, but before I do, did you hear about the World Economic Forum says that you'll be okay? The elite say you can drink sewage, eat weeds, and eat bugs. Now, I harvest edible and medicinal plants. That's one of the that's how I live. I garden, I hunt, I fish, I live off the land here in Montana. Now, but you better be able to tell a wild onion from a death camas root. You better be able to tell a cow parsnip from a water hemlock. You better know if you need to cook or eat it raw. You need to know about its toxicity. Is it emetic? How about the palatability? There's so much information, folks, that you need to know. It's not like just going out in the woods or in your backyard and picking stuff. You got to know if you're picking off someone's farm. Or did they poison the ground? Did they poison the dandelions? You don't know this. You need to get this information. Okay. Next article. Whitmer considers Christmas lockdown. Next. After mounting evidence, the FDA and the CDC now admits the coronavirus tests are faulty, but yet I just saw an article yesterday saying that the CDC wants to close Christmas too. Next, UN climate projects accused of fraud and corruption. Imagine my shock. And the UN wants to control the world via the globalists and all these institutions. Next, Vermont schools are interrogating kids about their Thanksgiving gatherings and forcing quarantines on those who had multi-family gatherings. This is Nazi stuff. This is total Nazi stuff. Achtung, show me your papers. Next, it's not just Newsom. San Francisco, San Jose mayors busted, violating own COVID guidelines. How many of these examples? Dozens have we given over the weeks. Next, Texas Democrat mayor tells residents to stay at home while he was caught vacationing in Cabo. You can't make this crap up. Next, U.S. News car hijackings up over 500% in Minneapolis. What do you expect when you defund the police, you morons? Next, Project Veritas, CNN senior VP Cynthia Hudson demeans Cubans that support Trump. Cubans are attracted to bullies. And all this other derogatory information and news about Cubans. Just like Ilhan Omar said, Latinos can't compete in a merit-based system. My God, the Democrats actually hate Hispanics or Latinos. They hate them. What the heck is going on here? Next, Texas Coalition reports 228% jump in homeschooling in state over 20 years. It should be 1,000% jump. Get your kids out of the government social political indoctrination schools. They shouldn't even be called schools. Next, Republican-led U.S. Senate first major legislation after 2020 election to appease big tech. You see, folks, it's not just a left-right paradigm. It's the aristocracy manning and controlling the serfs and making you pay for it. It's all fraud. How about ballots? Cindy Powell said ballots were coming out of Mexico as well. Algorithms adjusted, software, fractional votes, less going to Trump, more going to Biden, countless Dominion election frauds, money going to state officials who bought the software, kicking out observers, unfolded ballots coming in that got mailed, and I'm using air quotes, copy machine ballots. I mean, how does the left expect President Trump to concede in an election that he won? Ask yourself that question. Online voting systems, USB sticks, votes going out of the country, shredder trucks showing up. I mean, this is surreal. Do you remember what I said on Tuesday about the Pennsylvania vote on 11/24, that vote tally? There was and I'm going by memory here, there's like 2.5 mail-in ballots that the Pennsylvania state reported, and 2.5 that was total, but Pennsylvania reported like 1.4 million ballots that actually went out, but they reported 2.5 million. So there's 1.2 million that basically came out of thin air going into the Joe Biden column. Vote switching live on TV. Trump total votes right in front of our eyes in multiple states, literally decreasing his vote tally. How do you decrease a total vote tally? Is this new math? People, when you hear anybody being called an expert or an official or a public servant, they're jokes. Run the other way after you're done laughing. Thank you for being here.